Well, the key principle in Dzogchen is that everything is fine as it is. Nothing has to be changed. Now, of course, we have all kinds of dissatisfactions in our lives, hopes and fears and so on. These arise and pass. The issue is not in the object, nor in the subject. The issue is in the relationship. It's how we take it up. For example, if you have in your kitchen a very sharp Japanese knife, you should never grab it by the blade. The knife is very useful, but you take it by the handle, you use it, it's very, very safe. If you take hold of it by the blade, it's very unwise. You take it the wrong way and it becomes destructive and harmful. You take it in the right way and it's fine. And this is really all that Buddhism is saying. Attend to the shape of things, attend to the actuality of things, and that attunement keeps you on the safe side. But when you act from an assumption, which is an internal frame of reference, which makes opaque your relationship with the actual shape of the world, you're likely to have problems. So mistaking is both mistaking on a conceptual level, not understanding how it is, but it's also taking up the experiences of the world in an unhelpful way. So not seeing that everything is open and empty and radiant, we imagine substantiality and then we take hold of people in a substantial way and feel there's something to get. The real basis that we need is direct experience of our own mind. So we start to explore the basic 5 questions, which some of you know well. And these are questions to clarify for ourselves whether our mind is like anything else. So the 5 questions are, does it have a shape and color? Does it have a dimension, a size? Does it come from somewhere? Does it remain somewhere? Does it go somewhere? So even just in this room, if you look around, you see pillars, you see the walls, you see windows, lights, and so on. Each of these has a shape and a color. Each of these has a size, a dimension. It's big or small in relation to other things. You can see that it came from someplace. The paint comes from a paint factory. The cast iron supports on the banister came from an old-fashioned foundry, and so on. It's here for a while, and then it will change. The usage of buildings around here is changing a lot. So it's maintained by certain factors, and after a while, the factors of destruction will change. Even if this room is not all that altered in its shape from its original beginning, the minister who was officiating in the church would be very surprised that we are here. They would be wondering, oh, what are these people here for? This is a Christian building. So reinterpretation and change goes on all the time. With the design of motor cars, with the kind of food that you have available, the rise of the vegan diet shifts how supermarkets are organizing food. The idea of minimizing food wastage is very prevalent now for big food chains. They have to have a clear public policy. That wasn't there 20 years ago. So we see that shape and packaging, how food is packaged, less plastic and so on. This arises due to a concept, and it changes, and it changes. So everything in the world, I would suggest, can fit into these 5 questions, whether it's trees or bushes or boats in the Mediterranean or the kind of fish that you can find in the sea or butterflies or snails, whatever you encounter, planets, whatever you think of, will have shape, color, dimension, and so on. So we're going to explore these questions in relation to our mind. So we're going to take them up one by one. And the way we do that is we just enter into our quiet sitting practice and very gently allow the question to arise. And I'll introduce each question as we go through it. We're not looking like a detective. We're not investigating something, because if you do that, you solidify the subject position. I am the one who is looking, this is what I'm looking at. And then it's very difficult to see clearly. We're just sitting. Events are occurring. You have the sense of the room, thoughts, feelings, something in your body, arising and passing. If I'm not pushing the things away, if I'm not merging into them, there's just a simplicity of allowing the flow of experience, and I'm present in that flow of experience. What is the nature of the one who is aware? So that is your mind. The awareness is your mind. Usually we think, well, I'm aware. This is a quality of me. But as we've already been looking, it's very difficult to establish me, because me as a content of the mind changes and changes and changes. So you have to be careful not to fall into a solipsistic trap, to arrive at the conclusion that you've started with. I am the one who knows. We want to bypass an easy assumptive inclusion and stay open, letting the mind reveal itself. Because if you tell your mind what it is, your mind will then appear to you exactly what you tell it that it is. My mind is dull, my mind is heavy, my mind is this, my mind is that. And there you're describing qualities, and these qualities are transient. So we want to sit quietly and openly. Events are arising. We usually fixate on the event because we are interested in the throughput, these transient sensations. So we don't go down that path. But we're using the fact that events are occurring and that we are aware of it to clearly show I am present. How is this presence? We're not asking who or what is this presence, but how is it? So how is my mind? Does it have a shape? Does it have a color? And we sit and allow the mind to show whether it is indeed like that. It's here. Your mind is here. You're not dead. This awareness is not some mystical substance. The issue is it may well be not like anything else. It may be radically other, incorporatable into your standard frame of reference. So whenever you find yourself mobilizing your frames of reference to try to apprehend it, just relax in the out-breath and stay patient, open, and allow the mind to reveal itself. Does that seem okay? So we sit for a bit and just very gently allow this a question to arise for you. Does the mind have a shape? The mind is here. Does it have a shape? Does it have a color? The second question is, does the mind have a size? Is it something inside you? Some people might believe it's in the brain, might believe it's in the heart. These are beliefs, these are ideas. Is the mind the same shape as your body? Is it outside your body? Is it outside your body and inside your body? Is everything inside the mind? You're here. You have your awareness. How is it? And the key thing, of course, is we have been relying on the content of the mind to create our interpretations of everything we experience, whether we like the food that's offered to us, whether the rain, very fine smear rain today, is pleasant or unpleasant. All these interpretations are thoughts that arise in the mind and pass through. We tend to focus on the arising. The mind is the medium, the revealer, like the mirror. The reflections pass through the mirror. They show from the mirror, in the mirror, as the mirror, but they are not the mirror. So whatever is arising in the mind is inseparable from the mind, in that you can't take it out of the mind, but it's not the mind itself. So what we're looking for is something quite subtle, and it's very likely that we get hooked by our habitual fixation on a content. We come to a conclusion and we seem to apprehend something. When that happens, just relax in the out-breath, let that moment pass. You see, oh, that was a construction, that was a temporary arising, some cognitive conclusion, and it's gone. So, how big is the mind? Is it big, small? Can we say anything about it? Okay, so we sit with this again, and it's a helpful opening to see how subtle and deceptive our grasping at the object is. So, for example, there are some bells, church bells, ringing at the moment. And of course we can have the idea, oh, the bells are far away, they're in the church, the air is carrying the vibration of the sound into my ear, and my mind is making sense of it. This is something you learn in school. It's an interpretation. It's a story. When you hear the bell, do you hear it inside yourself or do you hear it out there? Where is your mind? If you always give yourself the interpretation of what you know, you consolidate your sense of being someone who knows things. But if you avoid the seduction of that pre-packaged analysis and you stay with the not knowing, here is sound, where is the mind? Sound is there. We keep looking, and many interesting answers arise. When they do, you don't have to push them away. You don't merge into them. So it's just like the basic meditation instruction. Stay with your solution to this question and see what happens. If the solution is intrinsic, it will just be there. And if it's a construct, if it's an interpretation, it's something that will arise and pass because it's based on causes. Cultural causes, educational causes, your own private belief system. So you don't have to change anything, but we have to think, the mind is here. Our mind is always here. It's the basis of our having experience. If the conclusion about it is transient and contingent on our education and culture, perhaps this interpretation or conclusion is in fact an obscuration of the mind rather than the mind revealing itself. So you have to look for yourself. Of course you can read in the books how the mind is. The problem with that is you can take this Dharma knowledge and internalize it. So now you have a new higher order belief system, but you're still believing something. And of course, when you operate like that, you study something, it stays in your mind for 5 minutes, now you're very, very clear, and then you've completely forgotten it. Because everything which arises in the mind is impermanent. It's the mind itself we're looking for. So you can see here what ignorance is, how we become ignorant, not by being stupid or bad, but by being seduced by a concept which seems to be the truth and then dissolves by itself. Now, concepts can give you the truth about identifiable objects in the world. So when we finish today, I go to the railway station, I need to get on the right train. So I know where I'm going, and I look at the sign, and it tells me, is this the right train or not? So conceptual understanding is very useful for practical purposes, because there is something, as it were, to think about. But the mind itself, is it a thing? This is our question. Because this is basically saying, am I a thing? Am I a thing among things? Or is this something other? What is this? What is the ground of my being? What is the basis of this presence or awareness? We have the presence and awareness. We are here. We're not dead. We're not asleep. How is this? How is so important? Because how means stay with the presentation, stay with what is there. The mirror reveals itself through the reflection. The mind reveals itself through thoughts, feelings, sensation, the experience of the five senses, and so on. These experiences are not the mind itself. They are the energy or the showing of the mind. What is the mind? Because if you believe the mind is substantial, what arises will be in the same family. It will be substantial. If you plant rice, you won't get wheat. If you have an apple tree, you won't get pears. So if the basis of the mind is something, if I am something, someone, everything that happens to me then seems very real, because there is some solid, enduring self-ground, self-basis. But when we sit and we see the ingredients of myself are dynamic and ever-changing, unpredictable, unreliable, fleeting, situationally evoked, who is the one who is aware of this? This is me. How am I? So this is what we're looking at. So now we come to the third question. Does the mind come from somewhere? My shoes come from somewhere. My shirt comes from somewhere. The fillings in my teeth come from somewhere, from different dentists at different times in my life. Everything comes from somewhere, every object we can find. Does the mind come from somewhere? We think, oh, a thought comes from my mind. This sensation is arising in my body. It comes from my body. It's revealed through the clarity of my mind. So my mind reveals what arises, whether it seems outside or inside. Is the mind ever revealed as something? Is the revealer also able to be revealed? That is to say, is the mind an object for the mind? Everything can be an object for the mind, but is the mind itself an object? Does it come from someplace? All objects have an origin. The rocks in the hills around Macclesfield, they have their history. If you're a geologist, they can tell you at what time these kind of rocks arose and what's happened to them subsequently. There's a history of everything, a genealogy of everything. But what about the mind itself? So, does the mind come from somewhere? Let's sit with that. So when we are looking around the world and we're considering where things come from, we rely on signs. And when we were looking at these four stages or 4 aspects of ignorance. The third one was the ignorance that formulates an interpretation of the world through reliance on signs. These can be linguistic signs, signs of shape, and so on. So Christian churches have crosses on them. This is a sign that this is a Christian building. Mosques have a crescent moon usually on the top. And the town hall of Macclesfield has a rainbow flag, which is quite surprising. Maybe it's a comment on Brexit, I don't know. But there's something about, we read that and we think, oh, that indicates something. So, as interpretive creatures, we live in this semiotic world, a world of signs, which we can say this person is young, this person is old, looking at their face, their hair, and so on. We can look at the kind of clothes that they wear, we can see whether they're concerned with style, with showing a particular aspect, or whether they're more like me and a sort of crumpled person. Each of these can be read and interpreted in a different way. The question now that we're looking at in terms of the mind is, are there any signs in the mind itself which allow us to make a reading of it? So you have a sensation in your body and you think, oh, there I go, that's my little sore shoulder, a bit of arthritis or something like that. Or you get a little twinge in your tooth and you think, oh, should I go to the dentist or not? You're trying to work out what is the indication offered by the pain, by its intensity, its frequency, and so on. Or you feel some emotion arising when you look at someone. What is this an indication of? Should I get closer to that person? Am I falling in love? Whatever. So we read these kind of feelings and sensations. And the important thing to recognize in this is that the meaning and the value of the objects in the world is you. There is no self-clarity in any object. Objects are relational. So, you want to buy an apple, you go into the shop, they have 5 kinds of apple. Which apple will you choose? That depends on you. Some apples have a very sweet flavor, some are very crunchy. It will depend on your mood. You might always want to eat a particular kind of apple. That's you and the apple. That is a moment of us. It's not that there is the apple and here is me and I just happen to choose this apple. But this apple is starting to shine for me because I am shining a light on the apple. The apple for me is my apple even before I buy it, even before I eat it. This is what interpretation means. We don't see things as they are, we see them through interpretation. This is the barrier that Edmund Husserl encountered when he was developing modern phenomenology at the beginning of the last century. He always said, back to the things themselves. But you can't get to the things themselves. You see, you have to bracket off your interpretation, bracket off your memories, your assumptions, and you can try your best to do that. But the thing itself, you never get to. Because there is no thing itself. It's always thing and me. Because I am the thinger of the thing. There is no thing without me. I am the thing maker. Without me, there is just light and sound. So, reification, the development, the creation of the thingness of the thing is a mental process. There are no things out there in the world. Everything is up for grabs, for interpretation, for belief. Which is the best kind of apple? What's the best kind of chocolate? It depends. Depends on you. What's the best kind of motor car? That depends. If you live in the city, if you live in the country, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, it's always a meeting place, a marketplace of moving forces, which will also be inconsistent from your side, because different factors will arise in your mind. So, for example, you might be quite comfortable with a little crappy old car, and then you're in a near-miss accident, and you think, shit, I've got to get a car with more protection. I'm going to buy a Skoda. Never thought to buy a Skoda, but now you think, whoa, life on the road is dangerous. And on the basis of this, you reinterpret the value you're attributing to vehicles. You can observe this for yourself. This is you interpreting and making sense. It's such a wonderful phrase. We make sense by denying the senses and putting concepts in the place of the senses. So it's a very deceptive procedure. So just holding this in mind as we sit with these questions is very important. It's not that there's anything wrong or bad in our mental construction. It's about how you position yourself. So, for example, I'm here with you, looking at you. Here is my hand. Nothing wrong with my hand. But if my hand is here, I have a difficulty in seeing you. Now my hand is a problem. Now my hand is not a problem if my aim is to see you. Problem, no problem. Problem, no problem. It depends on a relationship. There is nothing intrinsically good or bad. It depends on utilization and function. So, when you are wanting to get close to the mind itself, which is a bizarre thing to say because we are the arising of the experience displayed by the mind. The mind is already here. So our mind is revealing ourselves as this person seeking our mind. Interesting. In that movement, the desire is to get something. So we're looking from a familiar paradigm. We're in a set of assumptions. We're operating on the basis of certain axioms that the world is full of things and I can have knowledge of these things. So in this practice, that attitude becomes like the hand in front of you. Relying on assumptions, relying on thoughts to reveal the mind obscures the mind. Normally we see our thoughts as, if they're reasonably okay thoughts, they're illuminating. If it's a habitual negative thought, we understand, oh, I'm beating myself up or I'm getting a bit lost in here. But normally we think, oh, it's Sunday, that's why the bells are ringing. That's a reasonable linking, isn't it? Thinking is linking. It's always connective across because it's in the semiotic web. It's the networking that gives rise to the moments of clarity and insight. But if you rely on the concept is like an opaque window, you know, when they sandblast the glass so that you can't see through it. Or it's like a reflective thing that gives you back the image of yourself. It's like a wall. It's not really a wall, but it's because you're trying to use the thought for a function it cannot perform. Thoughts will tell you about things, that is their function. If you're looking for the mind as a thing, you will rely on thoughts. But you've already started with an assumption the mind is a thing. So if we want to give ourselves a fair chance, relax out of that basic assumption. Just space. I'm just sitting. I wouldn't have this experience unless there was the clarity of the mind as the showing, the illuminating. What is that illumination? I don't want to go down the line of what. How is that illumination? How is it? So now we take the fourth question. When the mind seems to be present, where is it? In this room there are lots of chairs. As people have been moving around, the patterning of the chairs has shifted from the first time that we entered into the hall. So chairs get shifted according to people sitting and standing and moving. Location is altered, so we see patterns of formation. This is the content of the room. The content of the mind patterns itself. Don't be seduced by the pattern. Don't be seduced by the familiar. Because when you go for the familiar, what you do is you pull the unfamiliar into the familiar. That's generally what we do. We have certain categories of interpretation, and we bring this in as an exemplar, as an instance of this particular pattern. So we say, oh, this is a very intellectual kind of person, or this is a very sporty kind of person. We already have an idea of sporty people, so we see this person running up and down the road and we think, oh, that's a sporty person. So we're using preformed categories to give shape to the experience that arises. Whenever you find that, again, relax in the out-breath, the category will dissolve. How is my mind? So now we have this question. The mind is here. How is it here? How does it do being here? Is it resting on something? Is it supporting something? How is it? I'll just say a little bit more about this one and then we'll do it again because it's very, very important. In our embodiment, we have a kind of situatedness. We are positioned. Our sense organs are directed frontwise. We don't really see behind us. Our ears are for catching what is coming towards us. And so, in the identification with the body, you have this is me, I'm here-ness. So, the dog was wandering around, the dog is coming close to me, the dog is going away from me. So, I'm tracking events in terms of this fixed reference point, which is me. When we start with this assumption, there seems to be an enduring stability here. And therefore, when I think about the mind, it's the mind in relation to me. So then it's easy to say, I have a mind. I have a hand. I have shoes. I have a mind. Linguistically, that formulation is quite meaningful. Do you know where your shoes are? Yes. Do you know where your hand is? Yes. Do you know where your mind is? If you bring the mind into your habitual formulation, you become stupid. Because the grammatical formula imputes, shows or insists or describes that your mind is like your shoes. I have a mind. I have nails. Maybe I should cut my nails. I stand in relation to my body. I have a mind. This is what we have to escape from. This is a pre-packaged deal. This is a package holiday. This is already being prepared. You arrive in the hotel and you have a shitty buffet, but you eat as much as you like. This is Crapville. But it's a done deal. And you sit inside this mental construct. You have to say, hang on a minute. Is this true? Do I have a mind? Or does the mind show me? I have a mind puts the ego as basic and central. I am the center of the world and I identify what is going on. I am the one who attributes value. I say what's going to happen. I comment on everything. I create this world for myself. This is the lonely burden of the heroic ego, ceaselessly working and working and working to create the world. This is the ego as Sisyphus, endlessly pushing this rock up the hill, up the hill, up the hill. I just saw a very nice cartoon of Sisyphus, in which, as he pushes the rock up the hill and he gets to the top, you see the picture of the hill, and the hill is made of rocks. So he is making his own hill with the rocks. And this is us, with our ego sense. When you were a small child and you're running around, you have a few rocks. Now, at this age, you have many, many rocks, the boulders of your hurt heart, your hopes and fears, and all the rest of it. You have constructed this edifice of the self. It is a construct, but it's held in place by your belief that it is intrinsic. This is what we looked at yesterday, the ignorance of not understanding karma. Instead of seeing the sequence of causes that have led to this result arising, you believe it's self-existing. I'm just me. I've always been me. But James, you've changed a lot over the years. Yeah, but I've always been me. Well, what's the meanness of that me? What's the truth of it? I'm just me. And you get to a point where you want to say, fuck off, leave me alone. Because it's self-existing, it's self-obvious. I'm just me. That is that's the real dark shadow. That's the place where stupidity hides, because it doesn't want a light to shine on it. Who am I? I am what is revealed. I am the becoming, which is co-emergent with the events around me. So I am a showing in a field of showing, because you and I together in this room are having this experience. This is shared experience. We have the field that we share, our sense of being here, and we have our particular experience of being in this field together. What is the ground of that? It's the mind. It's the showing. We wouldn't have the room unless we were here to experience it. We wouldn't have the sense of being ourselves at this particular moment as we are without this being revealed to us. I am revealed by my mind. I am the revelation of my mind. This room is the revelation of my mind. What is the mind? How is the mind? So this is what we go back to. So, if you start from the assumption, this body is real, this is my body, this is my home, what kind of a home is it that changes so much? Somebody sneezes and you get a cold. That's a pretty poor kind of home to have. There's no front door, there's no windows. Wind just blows in and you get sick because somebody coughs over you. This is not a home. This is a site of engagement. This is a site of participation. This is a part of the whole. It is not apart from the whole. But when we conceptualize it as I, me, myself, I am here, I am just me, and I'm not you. I'm not you. But when I say I'm not you, the fact that I reject you as me is the basis for me becoming me. So the separative is actually connective. Fuck off. Leave me alone. I don't want anything to do with you. That's quite an intimate connection. Love and hate are both glues. Something's getting to us. We want more of it, we want less of it. So what we're having to do here is, as we do the practice, just observe how the familiar propositions that I am this body, or I am inside my body, or this sensation in my body tells me I am me. We're gathering these little moments into the pattern that supports this conclusion, I'm here, this is me, this is me. And as long as we're seduced by that, we're pulled into particularization. And the particularization is always a figure ground experience. A lot of what's here recedes because it's irrelevant for us in this moment. And something else becomes very special. And on the basis of that special, like a frog jumping in a lily pond across from one leaf to another, we leap from one sensation to next thought to a memory to give this illusory continuity of I, me, myself. So when we're sitting, just relax and we allow ourselves really to see, is this body enduring or is it a flow of sensation? Body as movement. Concept as movement. Memory as movement. The room as movement. Light is coming into our eyes. The room is revealed through the movement of light and sound. Of touch. Touch is also movement, isn't it? Ceaselessly like that. If you run your hand up your arm, sensation arises and passes. Arises and passes. Smells arise and pass. Everything is movement. But we grasp at it as something, we impute fixed identity into transient forms. This is the meaning of ignorance. Not seeing the openness, imagining the entity, and taking the world to be a world of things, within which I am another thing. I am a thing among things. That's a construction. That's a belief system. Every belief arises and passes in the mind. If you meet a stranger in the street and he says, can you lend me 200 quid? I'll give it back to you tomorrow. Where do you live? Oh, I'm just passing through. When will you be back again? Oh, I'll come back tomorrow. Would you want to give them £200? A thought arises in your mind, I'm me, and then it's gone. Oh, I'll believe in that. That's a good thought. This is who I am. I'm like this. Mm-hmm. Good, yeah. Mm-hmm. Gone. You're cheated by your own thoughts. These thoughts are confidence tricksters, and you are a dupe. You are easily taken in. And why are you easily taken in? Because you want to be taken in. And why is that? Not because of a personal fault, but the ego is not self-existing. The ego pretends to be self-existing while actually being dialogic. That is its lie. I'm just me, but I'm lonely without you. Be my friend. Don't leave me just with me. I don't like just being me. I need you to be me. So what kind of a me is that? It's a dynamic me. When you look for it, you can't get it as something. I am not a thing. Just, if you keep aware, this is not a dogma. You don't have to believe this. I'm not trying to flog you something. You observe for yourself how you cheat yourself, how you believe things that are not true. We take on particular kinds of identity. Just as we wrap ourselves in different kinds of clothes, we wear these identities and then they're gone. If you think back on the course of your life, all the things that were important, your first football, your first bicycle, your first ice skates, and how special they were, and then after a while they're not so special. You have toys, dolls, and so on. You were always playing with them, and then you're not playing with them. And then your mum says, do you want to keep this? No. And then your mum gets rid of it, and they say, I wanted it, I didn't really want it. Because we're ambivalent. But we don't really want it, but it reminds us of who we were. So we're using lots of phenomena in the world in that way. This, if you look you see, oh, this is a self-construct. This, because the ego is empty and has no truth or existence of its own, like a magpie, it's taking the shiny things of the world to fill its nest. So this is what we're doing. So I'm constructing myself. So that's an activity. Now you can observe that when you sit, because you see the thoughts coming and you see how you become selective, building up this image of I, me, myself. Movement. This is movement. Movement doesn't establish stillness. Movement also doesn't disturb stillness because it's just passing through. The wind blows through the sky remains open because the wind doesn't touch space. Space has nothing to be touched. Wind will move air. If you open the window and the draft comes in, the air in the room moves around because the wind is a form of air, and the air in the room, they move together. They are in the similar dimension of existence. But space is untouched. The mind itself is like that. Thoughts and feelings moving in the mind. But what is the mind? How is the mind? So again and again, just become more aware of how you fall under the power of a seductive false belief. And stay fresh. You don't have to reject the belief. It's not something bad. It's just an option. If you don't merge into it, it goes free by itself. The question is, well, who would merge into it? The ego. So we are here with our presence, just a basic lucidity, and inside that, the egoic formation arises, which is wanting to pattern our sense of self. So you can be aware of this patterning of the sense of self, which arises in harmony with the patterning of your sense of the other person. You take certain aspects of how they are, and you create for yourself your image of the other. You have an image of the other and an image of yourself. And if you're lucky enough to have a good friend, and you ask them what they think about you, you will find that their image of you and your image of you are not the same. No. You, who you really believe yourself to be, is just an image, and it shifts in time. So this is movement. So ignorance means pretending that movement is stillness, pretending that movement is enduring existence, inherent existence. Stay with how it is. How it is showing. It just shows itself. This is how it is, how it is. But you imagine something else. You layer how it is with your belief about it. And then you, seduced by your own belief, you don't get the immediacy. So in the Dzogchen text, it's always talking about the mind as naked, fresh, unprepared, simply as it is from the very beginning. It's unadulterated, uncontaminated. It's simply itself. But the ego is cooking all the time. The ego is looking for more spices, more herbs, more ingredients, because it's building something. Awareness doesn't build anything. Okay, so we sit again with this question. How is my mind now? Where is it? Does the mind go somewhere? Does it vanish? We know that our thoughts vanish, our sensations, feelings, memories. We know that the weather changes, the calendar changes, the leaves come off the trees, then the buds come on the trees. Coming and going, that's part of everything we experience. So we're sitting, various experiences come and go, come and go. Does awareness, our basic presence, this basic lucidity, the revealing quality, the ground of our having any experience at all, does it go? If it goes, where does it go? How does it go? This is your mind. It will show you. So we sit with that. Of meditators. They allow you to come very close to the mind itself. Not looking at the mind, not thinking about the mind, but finding yourself as the mind. You find yourself in the openness of the mind. But if you look for the mind as a subject looking for an object, that very effort will hide the mind from you. This is why this is a path of relaxation, of non-effort. The meditation is called the meditation of non-meditation, because you're not trying to achieve anything, to go from here to there. You're trying to be here where you are. And you can't, of course, be here where you are by trying, because you are already here. So the more you make effort, the more you obscure what you're looking for. Because in fact, we're not looking for anything, because it's not a thing. So this is a very strange kind of experience when we're seeking solidity. Our world privileges the earth element. Prediction, stability, something to build on, something that will give us a sense of the meaning and value of our existence. But this is not pointing in that direction at all. From the point of view of Dzogchen, these are just self-defeating fantasies of imagining a substantial reality which doesn't exist. So when we think, does the mind go? And the mind is me. Well, I, as James, as a person, will go. After some time, I will go to the station. I will go to London. So this body will not be in Macclesfield. Who is the one who is going to London? There is a body in a train. What is the body? It's a movement of energy. What is the train? It's a movement of energy. What is the countryside? It's a movement of energy. You see sheep, you see farmhouses, you see the trees moving because of the wind. This is all movement. I is an empty signifier. I has no content of its own. But I, because it's empty, can be filled. So I, in its filling, becomes the ego. I, in its emptiness, is awareness. When you see that, the ego and the awareness are not oppositional. The ego is the reflection in the mirror. I, as awareness, is the mirror. Both are referred to as I. When you see the reflection is arising in the mirror, the ego is not the enemy. The ego is not the problem. When the I, which is this ever-changing dynamic pattern of the becoming of myself in this particular form, being with other people, being like this and that, this process of becoming, referred to as I, as flow, as display, as emergence, as ungraspability, this is non-dual with I as awareness. But I as a pseudo-essence, as something which I cleave to, and then with this as my frame of reference, my deluded frame of reference, I then look at the objects of the world, the experiences of the world, and use them as adjectives and adverbs, as qualifications, modifications of this existing I, me, myself. I, this thing, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm hungry, I'm this, I'm that. We're all the time, when we talk with each other, expressing modifications of the basic positioning of I, me, myself, as if it were a thing apart, a thing having its own existence. And the key thing to notice here is that the I as ego is becoming, is movement. It changes and vanishes. Since you've been born, you have been so many people with so many emotions, so many shapes of your body, so many hopes, so many fears, so many adventures. Each of these in that moment has been you, the totality of you. You were just that. And then you weren't. And then you weren't. I, as ego, is always vanishing because it is a formation movement in space and time. I, as awareness, is not in space and time and doesn't change. So when we're clear about that, then you see the non-duality of becoming, of manifesting, and stillness of never changing. The ground, the openness of awareness never changes. The content of awareness is always changing. This is described in Tantra as these three bodies or three aspects of the Buddha: Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nimanakaya. Dharmakaya never changes. And they say Dharmakaya is the mind of the Buddha. This is our own awareness. And he says the Dharmakaya is for us. So we're just aware. The Sambhogakaya, which is the radiance, the experience of the world as light, this is for the other. And then the Nimanakaya, the movement within the field of light, this manifestation which we are all the time, this is for the other. So awareness is for ourselves, and our manifesting is manifesting in the world for others. Wisdom, which is to find you who you are, to awaken to the mind itself, and compassion, which is availability and participation for the benefit of others, are inseparable. This is the key thing. And the more that you see that your ego self is a delusion, a construct, an obscuration, it's not intrinsically bad. It's not about getting rid of the ego, but you see, the ego is dynamic. It's not a thing. The mistake, the ignorance, the ignoring, is to pretend that the dynamic, the flowing, the changing is stable, which is the first level of ignorance that we looked at yesterday. Let movement move. Let stillness be still. If you try to make movement still, this is very exhausting. This is what samsara is. It's the effort to maintain the stability of that which is unstable. It's not wrong that it's unstable. Movement is moving. Stability is stable. What is stable? Awareness. What is moving? Participation in the field of disclosure. Disclosure is occurring all the time. This is revealed. This is revealed. This is revealed. What is being revealed is the potential of stillness. Stillness is the ground of movement. Movement is the display of stillness. Sound is the display of silence. Silence is the ground of sound. And these two are inseparable. They are not two different things. This is non-duality. They are not one thing. They don't merge into one, but neither are they separable. You cannot take the reflection out of the mirror. But it would be wrong to say the mirror is defined by the reflection. They are non-dual, not two, not one. So this is the key to the practice, the key to understanding how you are, the key to being at ease in the world in different situations. It's up to us whether we engage in this or not. It can remain just a set of interesting ideas, or it can be the means by which you soften yourself, and you soften yourself, and you soften yourself. Tibetans have the example that if you take a lump of butter and you put it in a leather bag and hang it on the wall, the leather will gradually dry out. And this is, village kind of leather, which is not treated the way modern leather is. But if you take some butter and you massage it into the leather will become soft and supple. So this is us. We have our rigidities, and if we use our knowledge as a container to keep Dharma inside us, like a ball of butter, nothing is going to change. You have to take the Dharma and massage it into yourself, moment by moment, not just when you're sitting, but when you're walking and talking with other people. And you experience, this is movement. This is movement. Body is moving, voice is moving, thoughts, feelings. Movement is movement. Movement is movement. And you think, oh, I could come to a conclusion. I could tie up this narrative. I could say I really like this person. I could say I really don't like this person. Where is the person? You say, oh, now I'm cheating myself. Now I am constructing something which I take to be the truth. This is who you are. We do this again and again and again. So when that happens, more butter, more massaging. Soften and soften and soften. And then you just, whoa, sweet. You can be in all kind of situations. All situations. You can have a broken heart. You can be very happy. It doesn't matter what is happening, because it is happening, occurring, unfolding. It is not the end of your life. It is not the final point. It's just a little movement and another movement and another movement. But if you turn movement into stasis and you think, oh, I'm fucked, I can't do anything, my life's ruined, this is tragedy. I have spent a lot of time with suicidal people, and what you see is always they're going into the corner, they're going into the conclusion, they're over-defining their situation, and it gets rigid and fixed, and then at a certain point they can't get out except by dying. They haven't been able to soften their existence, to turn and bend and find a new path. Life is always flowing. So if we want to flow, we have to be soft, adaptable, and let life happen. We are participants in life. We are not the master, not the slave. And on the Friday evening, we began by considering compassion for all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be happy. This is called compassion arising on the basis of sentient beings. When we see that sentient beings suffer, that they have many difficulties, difficulties of different kinds. For example, in London, the bird population is changing a lot. There are almost no sparrows, a lot of starlings, and a lot of magpies, and the magpies are very attacking towards small birds, so the robins are a bit endangered. You see, suffering can arise for all kinds of conditions, climate change, people's behavior, building sites, and so on. So we see sentient beings are sentient, they have feeling, and they have feeling because they have mind. So everything which has a mind is experiencing impact from the environment, some of which it sees as pleasurable, some of which it sees as unpleasurable. So our wish then in reflecting is that may all beings be protected from difficult situations, and may they have happiness. May they have the happiness which is not contaminated by any kind of difficulty, and may they achieve equanimity free of bias towards friends and away from enemies. Because if you have equanimity, then the hooks inside you for excitation and rapid arousal and reactivity become softened. The hooks open out and difficult situations arise, and that's what's arising. It's difficult. I don't have to do anything. Happy situations arise. You enjoy being in someone's company. You don't have to do anything. So gradually you can remain calm in all situations. Of course you can engage, develop friendships and so on, but without the desperation. Equanimity is that you have the bread, and with the bread you can put butter, jam, Marmite, whatever you like. You don't want to eat a whole pot of Marmite by itself, but some Marmite on the bread would be good. But you have to have the bread. The bread is the equanimity, because that's the basis for being satisfied. If you're satisfied in yourself, then your movement towards the world is not on the basis of need. You're not looking with hungry eyes, with a feeling of some lack inside yourself. Because it's this lack which provides a distorted vision, We project fantasies onto other people and imagine they're going to be able to give us what they can't. So equanimity, being even in one's feeling tone towards whatever arises, it's not it's not an anesthesia. You still have the felt sense of the situation. The equanimity is concerned with minimal reactivity. This is painful. This is difficult. This is maybe unjust. Something happens at work, people behave badly. I can see that. The question then is, what should be done? So if you have equanimity, you have more calm clarity with which to receive the contouring of the situation, and then you can review what is my capacity in this situation and what is the situation. It's these two things. How is this, what's the topology, what's the shaping of this environment, and what is my capacity in this moment? And my capacity is not just me for me, my capacity is also my authority. If you work in an institution, you are authorized to carry out certain roles, and because of that, your capacity is the inhabitation of the authority of the role. So it's given to you, it's attributed to you. So having an accurate sense of your capacity means if there is something to be done by me, I can do that. If there is something to be done, but I don't have a capacity or permission to do it, then it's not something for me to do. Hopefully someone else will, but I remain with equanimity. The revolution's in danger. Yes. Lots of people will die. Yes. That's very sad. Yes. There's a lot of sadness in the world. This is the veil of tears. This is samsara. That's why we try to get out of samsara, because this is the place where shitty things happen. So shitty things will not stop if you sacrifice yourself. If there is a difficulty and someone's experiencing the difficulty and you put yourself in between, this may not be helpful, to be a buffer zone, to sacrifice yourself. This is not the teaching of Christianity. This is a different kind of approach. For example, it says in the basic teachings that there are 10 basic faults. 3 of the body, 4 of speech, 3 of the mind. And one of the faults of speech is to insert yourself into other people's arguments. 2 people are disagreeing and shouting at each other. Leave them alone. Because if you go in, you'll take sides. How do you know which is the right side, the wrong side? You've been sucked into some dynamic interplay. Leave them alone. Non-intervention is a good idea. Britain going into Iraq was not a good thing to do. And once you invade other countries, you set up these chains of reactivity that go on and on and on. All the troubles that are in Africa are linked to the colonial history. And now the French army is using Chad and Niger as training grounds for its own soldiers, which is what the Americans have done in their ex-colonies and colonies. There's all kinds of complications going on. So being involved is not necessarily very wise. All sentient beings suffer from time to time. How shall we help them not suffer? Firstly, by developing clarity ourselves, seeing the situation clearly, seeing ourselves clearly, and then thinking, can I help? Will I not help? Just jumping in the hope that it will be useful is probably not very wise. For example, if you have Extinction Rebellion and you take over part of London and block the bridges and so on, you make a mark, you wake some people up, and you fill other people with horror and disgust and an absolute resistance to it. I'm going to go home and have a bonfire. Carbon dioxide. You're getting at me. It's taken me 2 hours extra to get home because of your fucking protest. Well, fuck you. That's not bringing about a change of attitude, because action, reaction. If you want things to change, you have to work on the cusp of the change. Freud understood that very clearly. He said the time to make an interpretation is when the patient is ripe and ready to receive the interpretation. You squeeze the boil at the point where it should be ready to pop. Otherwise, you put the poison further into the flesh. So this is compassion arising on the basis of consideration of the suffering of other beings. And the main thing we need to do is become enlightened for the sake of all beings. If we don't have clarity, then you have the blind leading the blind. So we use the suffering of others to make a commitment to be for them when we are able to do that. And that then becomes an encouragement in the second aspect of compassion, which we touched on, which is compassion focused on the Dharma, on the Buddhist understanding. That by learning about Dharma, by engaging in it, you gain a clarity and a capacity to understand what is going on. And with that clarity, you can mobilize different kinds of interventions in order to help beings. You learn about impermanence, you learn about the absence of inherent self-nature, you learn about the disturbed nature of your own mind, you learn about trying to calm your mind, and you see, due to Dharma, pathways open up for me, and I can start to make some changes, but all sentient beings, among all sentient beings, there are very, very few who have access to this. And therefore, I have an advantage that they don't have. I will dedicate my advantage for them. So that the more you learn, instead of this being pulled into yourself as a special person who has this royal path ahead of them, your commitment to the welfare of others balances the development and advantage that you have. So it's a protection against pride and hubris and isolation. The more Dharma you learn, the better it can be. So, for example, yesterday we were looking at some of the problematics around the imagination, that imagination can cover phenomenology. In the practice of Tantra, we rely on imagination as the antidote to deluded imagination. That is to say, you visualize a deity or a mandala, you see in front of you on a lotus, Padmasambhava, he looks like this, he's holding that, he's holding that. This is imagined. That imagination is luminous. You're imagining something, a form, has shape and color, but it's empty, it's translucent. Then you receive blessing in the form of light from that deity. This dissolves the substantiality of your body. Then that divine body merges into you as light. Light flows into light. Light flows into emptiness. And you sit in openness. And then again, life arises. And it arises as imagined. And you see, I'm imagining this building. I'm imagining the train I'm going to go into. I'm imagining the people in the room. You are images arising in the mind. There are no sentient beings. There are appearances which are empty. And when the appearances are the appearances of sentient beings, they have clarity and emptiness, awareness and emptiness. Everyone here has awareness. But as we were looking at these 5 questions, the awareness is not a thing. There's nothing to get. It is. So, the ground of awareness, open, empty awareness, shows the field of display, which is all the phenomena moving. And the clarity here means not to separate appearance from its ground. not to take the reflection out of the mirror. Clarity is, oh, this is appearing and empty. And then inside that, you manifest for the sake of sentient beings. So there you're using imagination to deconstruct the deluded forms of imagination. Because in the tantric path, imagination is the quality of the ground arising to dissolve the imagination generated by the ego, which denies that it is grounded in the ground. Yeah? The ego pretends to be an orphan. I have no mum. Please help me. Mum's always there. I don't like that mum, so I don't have a mum. No, but that is your mum. Your mum's emptiness. No, maybe you're my mum. Maybe I'm my mum. I am me. Self-existing. So that's the nature of the ego. It's an imagination which deludes. Whereas in Tantra you have imagination which reveals. So there are many, many Dharma paths you can study and practice, and they're all useful. They're all for the purpose of softening the false rigidity that comes from alienation. As we know, anxiety brings tension. So when people feel fear or PTSD and so on, the muscular structure tenses up. This affects the fascia, it affects the flow of oxygen through the body. There's all kinds of rigidities. The rigidities of the body feed into the rigidities of mental structures, of fearful interpretation, of suspicion, of avoidance, and so on. These are all forms of rigidity as separation. When people develop agoraphobia, they don't want to go outside. The agora, the open space, the space of the demos, the people, is then obscured because it's too dangerous. Other people are dangerous. So now you've got self further separating itself from the other. But self and other arise together. So that's why a condition like agoraphobia is so sad. You're protecting yourself from that which you need. So very often, in my clinical experience, agoraphobics recruit their family to come and bring them shopping and so on. So they're dependent on people while saying, I'm afraid of people. Something terrible will happen if I go out. This belief is imprisoning them. They are imprisoned by their own mind. We're imprisoned by our own mind in depressions and so on. So, when we are developing Dharma as a basis for compassion, we're both developing our capacity to help other people, but we're also developing our sensitivity to other people because we see how lost they are. When we see people suffering and we want to help, we have to be very careful. Their suffering is real, undeniable, but we may not be able to access them in that. So we have this famous Kaufman drama triangle of the victim, the persecutor, and the rescuer. And when you identify someone as the victim, it's very easy to be pulled into being the rescuer. But a victim is a victim because they're a victim. They don't want to be rescued, they want to be a victim. And if you try to rescue the victim and it's a real victim, they will see you as a persecutor because you are dislodging them from their victimhood. And therefore they will persecute you in order to stop you persecuting them by trying to rescue them from being a victim. And that goes round and round and round and round. So it's about availability. We can imagine how other people should be, could be, how they would be better off being, but that is what is called our mind. It is not them. It is not them. They are in their mental constructive world. And it may be completely fucked up. They may be very, very lost. But if they believe in the truth of their lostness, you will be their enemy. And so in Dharma, ripening is very important. That's why they say, if you take the Bodhisattva vow, I take this vow for as long as it takes to liberate all beings. And that can be thousands of millions of lifetimes, because beings are not ripe and not ready. So when we become impatient with other people or despairing about other people, it's because we have an agenda. If you empathically attune, you also attune into the restrictive formation of that person's life. They are as they are. And what will usually help most people is that you accept that they are as they are. And you don't put an extra burden on them by saying, you'd be better off being someone else. Because the reason that they are stuck is because they have been invaded and abandoned. They have not been seen as they are, and now you, in your helpful approach, want to tell them you shouldn't be as you are. You would be better off being someone else. That's what's said to them in another way when they were children. So, being available in a non-intrusive way allows a moment of availability in the other. Does that make sense? And the more you have an agenda, a prescription, a set of ideas about what the other person could be doing, especially a research-based protocol guaranteed by the nice guidelines, you're likely to be a slightly dangerous person because you feel authorized to impose. Ripeness is everything. Tibetans have a saying that if you want to get the tongue out of a yak's head when it's being boiled, you have to wait to the right moment. Because as the head is being boiled, where the tongue is fixed in the throat will gradually loosen, and then you can take the whole tongue out in a piece. There's a helpful thought for vegans. Yeah. If you try and yank it out, it will tear. If you leave it too long, it's going to dissolve and you just have soup. So you've got to be there on the ball, on the moment, on the point, always here, always here. Distraction is a problem because of timing. So you have to feel the pulse of life and be in the rhythm. So that is compassion on the basis of the Dharma. The third kind of compassion links to what we were just doing this morning. It's called the compassion or the kindness or the good-heartedness or the fellow feeling, which is free of objects. It doesn't take an object. So if you have an object, you have a subject. So when we say, I want to help all sentient beings, I, the subject, will help sentient beings, subject to object. But here, we rest in the state where the mind is open. Within this field of potential, these particular formations are arising, as we are in this room at the moment. We can construe, we can make sense of what's occurring at the moment in terms of subject and object. You are sitting there looking at me and listening to me while I'm talking. So you as the subject see me as an object. That's one way. Or energy is arising in this arena of the room and your energy is arising, and these energies together are moving in a becoming which brings different feeling tones, different forms of insight, and so on. This is an interplay of energy. Or you take it as I'm trying to do something to you. I'm trying to do something to you is very dualistic. You are like this, I want you to be other, therefore I'm doing this to you. But if you stay present without relying on that assumption, and you just experience, oh, this is it. Now I feel like this. Now this is arising. Now this is arising. Now this is arising. And as you arise in different ways, the experience of the room shifts. One moment it appears open, another moment you're more closed, and you see the pulsations of appearance. Here there is no object. There's no substantialization of the other. There's no consolidation of the other, because the other is movement, as we were looking yesterday. There are no people. We are not things, when you look for the mind, it's not a thing. It is an availability or an offering of ever-changing energy of manifestation. So, compassion or kindness, which doesn't take an object, is the ceaseless availability of our openness to the movement of what we take to be self and what we take to be other. So the ground is just open presence. Inside that the field arises, and my field is the sense of this body, my bum on the chair, my feet on the ground, how people are around me. This is arising together. I experience the sensation in my body, I don't experience the sensation in your body, but I see your face and I don't see my face. Cuts both ways. Win some, lose some. So I have the sensation and I've got your face. This is my experience. This is the field of our arising. We are revealed like this. The whole thing arises at once. Now, through concept, you can say, well, this is me and that's you. But if you just stay with the arising, there is sensation. And the sensation, when you look at a particular person's face and what you feel, and this is pulsating as you look around the room and see different people. This is becoming, co-becoming, co-emergence in the field. And within that, there is the unique specificity of yourself in the moment as you find your way of connecting with different people. So there is no fixed me. I am not an object, and you are not an object. This is the intersubjectivity where it's not really a subject. It's more like a interclarity or intershowing. Your becoming and my becoming in the field of becoming is just this and just this and just this and just this. On and on and on and on. It comes to no end. There is no conclusion. As soon as you want to say what happened, you get a shadow, you get an echo. We talk too much. Well, clearly I do. In general, we talk too much. Actually, I don't talk very much socially, but generally we talk too much because we give commentary on what is occurring. We tell people about our lives, which is meaningless. Because life itself in the lived moment is just this. It's infinite, it's ungraspable. And when you turn it into narrative, it's transformed into something else. It's the flavor is taken out of it, the vitality is taken out of it, and it is an abstraction. A narrative is an account of something. But when you find the something, you find that the something's not a something, but when you stay in the narrative, you can believe the something is a something. So we're back with reification is a conceptual elaboration. So the more you tell stories about Brexit, about the Prime Minister, you build up this image. Who Johnson is, I don't know. I'm sure he will be millions of different people. You can sum him up, but then you build up a fixed opinion of joy or trepidation. To what purpose? How can you respond? If you've already decided someone's an arsehole, what can you do? So, letting go of conclusions, not coming to formulation, is more ethical. So when we look for the mind and we can't find anything, awareness is infinite. It has no limit and no boundary. And whatever is arising in this awareness also has no limit. When you think you know someone, and when you know a few facts about them, and you come to some conclusion, you are taking the finite nature of the moment of showing and cutting it off from its infinite ground. And so the non-duality of the finite and the infinite is hidden from you, and oh, you're like this. So now you have a specific person existing in their own terms, and you know what they are like. Infinity vanishes. But infinity is the mother of the finite. All finites are within the infinite. All Buddhas are within the womb of the great mother, Prajnaparamita, the mother of all the Buddhas. Emptiness. So whenever we draw our little circles around people and have some sense of who they really are, this is a violence to the uninterrupted infinity of the field of becoming. And if I solidify you, I solidify myself. And now we have this clunky kind of relationship, me and my bubble, trying to work out who you might be in your bubble. And it's very lonely and very difficult then to find a kind of harmony and synergy and being in the pulse together. So this third form of compassion is to stay relaxed and open. Who is staying relaxed and open? Nobody is doing it. Nobody is doing it. But this is why trying to point out pathways of meditation is very difficult, because our grammatical formulations are all based on subject-verb-object, or subject-object-verb, depending on the linguistic structure. So this is what you have to do. When you meditate, be careful not to. So it is as if there is a meditator who is a slightly refined form of your ordinary subjectivity. We need to try to use language to deconstruct language. And my hope will be that in the future, as Buddhism is more and more in the West, there'll be more poetic interpretations of the Dharma, so that it will become both clearer and softer and richer in its way of getting through to us. But we have to think, I'm going to sit and do non-meditation. I, as ego, can't do non-meditation. I can do meditation. I could do prostrations or say prayers or visualize Tara, but I can't do non-meditation. Only awareness does non-meditation. So if you think I am basically my ego self, how do I get out of my ego self and into awareness? Can I dissolve my ego into awareness? Should I cut off myself in order to awaken to awareness? Many different Dharma paths say these kind of things, but actually there is only one ground. There is a mind. Mind is here. Mind has no division. When you feel yourself divided, this is your own thoughts. Who is thinking these thoughts? No one is thinking these thoughts. Well, I am. Who is the I? I am the thinker of the thought. And what are you like? Do you have shape and color? Do you have size? Do you come from someplace? No, no, no. Oh. Empty, open, available. Just like that. So whenever you find yourself closing down, becoming fixed, becoming limited, becoming definitive, don't try to change it. Just stay present with that. And then you see that formation will dissolve. In Dzogchen, this is called self-liberation. All phenomena go free by themselves. So if you try to free phenomena, you've already instituted yourself as the owner. So this is the issue of the manumission of slaves. At the end of the slave trade, well, during the period of slavery, in Roman slavery and in Greek slavery, as far as I understand, but also in modern slavery, a slave could become, through various administrative procedures, considered to be a free person. There were certain rules and regulations, because the master, the owner, would set the slave free. But if someone gives you your freedom, are you free? So your freedom will be constrained because it is not intrinsic to you. A free-born person is just free. So, in the same way, if we want to become Buddhas, if we want to awaken ourselves, this is something which is done. We end up as a subtle kind of construct. If you're native British, you're just British. And if you're an immigrant into the culture, you're always a little bit, oh, where have you come from? Da, da, da. There's always some idea that you're not quite of this place. And so you have to justify your existence or your presence. Many people feel that. So it's the intrinsic nature of the mind. So we looked at these two aspects, kada, primordial purity, intrinsic purity. The mind is pure from the very beginning. No matter what has occurred, no matter what you have ever done, it leaves no trace. The mind is not affected. The ego is affected. The mind itself is not affected. So, if you relax into that openness, all karma is dissolved. Like morning mist dissolving in the sunshine. It vanishes. But if you stay in your ego formation, you will be bound by the chains of karma, constrained into certain behavior patterns, activating more and more impulses which create more and more solidified identification. This is me, I am this person. So, who is doing the practice? Stupid question. How is the practice happening? Sitting. Who is sitting? Sitting is sitting. Walking is walking. Talking is talking. But there must be someone doing it. Really? This is the imposition of an agency inside people. For example, this morning I was waiting outside the Cafe Nero to have a coffee, and the door hadn't opened yet, and there was a man behind me whistling in a very tuneless way. Luckily, I turned around and frowned at him. You could tell I'm from Glasgow. Didn't fuck with me, sunshine. I've no had my coffee. But he's like, okay, so this is arising. What is it? It's sound and emptiness, and I don't like it. Oh, it's sound and emptiness. Why are you bothered, James? I don't like it. But you don't like it. Isn't that very solid? No, it's not like it, an emptiness. It's anger and emptiness. It's fucking hostility and emptiness. Emptiness goes with everything. You just smear it on. Everything and emptiness. So what is forbidden? Nothing is forbidden. Everything is empty. How will I know when I am being unethical? Well, if the behavior is arising from emptiness, it doesn't have the egoic, self-referential urge. It's not about me. It's just, there's a sound, I look around. Why would you make that? What is that? He goes quiet. He's looking around. Okay. So you have an intervention which has no violence in it, but it's just, I exist. That's all I was saying to him. I'm here too. So if I'm here and you're here, why are you doing that? Because that is a solitary activity. Do it in the shower. I don't mind. I'm here. So in that way, you have, in the shared field of becoming, it's not that you have to be a stookie. You don't have to be a wee prisoner trapped inside. Oh my goodness, I have to let other people be free. But it's like, what would be the minimal intervention to shift something? Because we exist. So may all beings be happy. That includes you. Don't be a martyr. Don't sacrifice yourself. Because that is the flavor of duality. It's a separative activity. But if you're part of the field, then you can move in the field to shift, to effect some small shifts that allow energy to flow more easily. It's almost like you're doing a social shiatsu. You're trying to find a point that allows the chi to flow in a slightly different way. And you can do that without conceptualizing the other person as annoying or bad or this or that. You're more likely to do that conceptualizing if you put up with it, with a rising irritation, and then you've got a stronger conclusion about that person and they did that. Boom. This is your mental activity. You have created this enemy in your mind. So minimal intervention early on is just a pulsation, a movement in the field of movement. And that's the meaning of this third form of compassion. It's compassion which never leaves emptiness, a compassion which stays in touch with the unborn, open, empty quality of everything that occurs. And therefore the field is not divided, and when the field is not divided, there are no sentient beings. Nobody has been born. We are born through thought. Entities, individuals, subjects, objects are concepts. The pre-conceptual moment is free of that. So that's our path. Okay. So we've covered quite a lot of ground. Hopefully it's useful, but you have to apply it. If you don't apply it, this period of time together will just fade away. So we do a final sitting. Okay. So, our time together comes to an end. We go off on our different journeys, different places. Some people have got quite supportive circumstances for maintaining a daily practice or a weekly practice. And some beings don't. For some people, if you're living on your own and you have many demands and many thoughts, you're tired at the end of the day, you're in a hurry first thing in the morning, finding time for practice can be difficult. The advantage of this kind of practice is it's not dependent on a formal structure. You can be standing at the bus stop for 2 minutes and just relax and open. You can be sitting in a cafe waiting for a friend. It doesn't require special circumstances for it to occur. It's not something sacred or holy. What is holy, that is to say, what is whole, is the whole shebang. Everything is within the whole. Everything is the great completion, the Dzogchen. So, however life is, whether it's happy or sad, whether you're lonely or have lots of friends, whether you're sick, healthy, just being present with how it is. When you go into comparing and contrasting and thinking, if only, or I wish, or why didn't I, these thoughts, which, as we've covered now many times, these thoughts seem to be illuminating some truth, but they're actually thieves. They are stealing you from this ever open space where you can be fully present in yourself. So we have to be very careful about thinking. Thinking which arises through us with a clear intention and clarifies the world can be like a machete. It clears away the underbush so that you can see clearly. But thoughts can also be like snakes coming around your neck and strangling you. Being caught by a thought is not thinking. Repetitive thoughts, obsessional thoughts, these are ways of being ensnared and blinded and confused. So it's not that thoughts are bad, it's like the sharp Japanese knife. Pick it by the handle and it's useful. Pick it by the blade and it's dangerous. Thinking, when thinking is required, is wonderful. If you have a sharp mind, that's wonderful. But to be caught by thoughts, obsessive thought, ongoing personal narrative, commentary, judgment, this is obscuration. So, it goes by itself. When you think you're trapped by your mind and you have to free yourself, this is a lie, this is a delusion. You don't have to free yourself. You are intrinsically free. The thought that you have to free yourself will stop you being free. It sounds strange, but it's true. So, when you're trapped, don't do anything. The limitation will vanish. If you act, you will act within the limitation and generate more limitation. This is the meaning of non-meditation, non-construction, non-compoundedness, not making. Remember, karma means activity, doing, making. Don't do, and life will do through you, because you are the energy of the manifestation of the ground. So, we've been here a little time together due to the support of many different people, the organizers who have so kindly taken time to put things in place. We've had recording done with the video and the audio, and hopefully these could be made available. And you've all participated with your attention. This is how we form ourselves into a particular shape for a moment. And now that will dissolve. And there will be some other moment. So what's very important is don't make this special. Everything is special. Free attention to everything, however it is. Standing in the rain, it's also special. Water coming down your face, wow. Nothing is special. equanimity, openness, evenness, enjoyment, playfulness. That's all. Time to go.